Okay, the next thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to take a look at the speaker section. So if I take a look real quick at my Figma drawing, you can see here that what we've got all of these different cards, if you remember. Each one of these little speaker people has a card with an image, their H3 name, P class title, P class company. All right. And so each one of these in this layout, you can see each card takes up 50%. So if we were to set the card to 50%, and when I say 50%, I mean 50% of the flex parent, which we can set the size of that later, but for right now, what we'll have is we'll have inside of speakers we'll have an H2, and then we'll have basically a large box that is going to be a flex parent box, and we'll create a class called flex parent or flex P or something like that, and then each card can represent 50% in the larger view, and later when we do our mobile responsive, piece, we can probably choose to have them in a single column or something like that, basically, or maybe not a single column, but they'll each take up 100% instead of 50, right? And so that can be our entire speaker portion. So that kind of gives you a general idea, and you can see that the title is, these are H3s, and we've already got that style except for the color, so we can just add the color, and then you can see that this is the regular sans serif so that we're using. Okay, so let's take a look here. And like I just showed you, the speaker section is reflective of what was in the Figma drawing. So we've got our section whose ID is speakers, we've got that H2, and then we have this large flex parent. If we were to collapse it, you'll see that that it pretty much comprises everything that's in there other than the H2. And then each one of these cards is their own card with all these different individual names, okay? And you can also see that each card has two classes attached to it. And the first one is called card. The second one is unique. It's like S1, S2, S3. And if you were to remember from our previous Figma drawing that each one of those has a different shape using border radius around each one. So that's what that's about. And we'll address that in a little bit. But for right now, let's start with maybe with the flex parent. Okay. We've already got speakers set up. So let's go ahead and make some rules here. So first of all, I guess what we can do is we'll go ahead and get speakers set up right off the bat, and you just make sure that you spell it right. Make sure that it matches the ID of speakers when you do it. Okay. And first things first, if you take a look at this, that the speakers section really needs some padding. And so if we were to think about kind of what we did before, we could start with some padding like around maybe 10% and see if that is actually adequate for everything. And I don't think that it necessarily is, right? Because we have this misalignment between the save the date and the speakers. Let's take a look and see what happens if we did this at 12%. And we can keep bumping that up a little bit. Let's see, about 14. And that's getting to be more like it. And I think maybe we even should look at 15. 15's a bit much. I think 14 was the sweet spot. Okay, and then we can make some adjustments here. See if it stays in alignment, and it looks like it does. And most importantly, I'm looking to make sure that speakers is lined up on the left with save the date. Now, I'm going to jump back over here. I'm going to actually make sure that my top and bottom are not 14. I want to do those at 10% because that's more in keeping with the other spacing on these. Yeah, so that's a little bit better. So right now what I've got is I've got my speakers portion, and actually I could do it even less. Let's say that we want it to be like 8%. And then I think that let's try that. It's a little bit more even. And then we can take a look and see, and it gets off just a tiny bit, and I'm okay with that because I'm okay with this being inset as long as the other ones are going to be pretty much equal. Okay, now the next thing that I want to do is I want to create something here for speakers, and there's a class in here that is called FlexP, and that was the one that was actually Flex Parent. So I could do this as speakers FlexP, but I actually think that I want to be able to use this FlexP or this Flex Parent class repeatedly. So what I think I'll do instead, here I'm going to leave that alone for a moment. I'm going to scroll down to General Classes, and I'm going to create something that is a class called Flex-P. And that stands for Flex Parent. And it's what I'm going to be calling out right here. Okay, so the thing about the Flex Parent is that obviously it needs to be display of flex, right? That makes most sense. So display flex, oops, there we go. And some other things that are going to be important about this would be, we also need to have flex wrap. So we'll say flex dash wrap is going to be to wrap. We definitely want that. The other thing I can do is I could give it, let's just leave it alone for right now. Let's just leave that as it is. And then one of the things that you'll notice here is that it doesn't look like it's doing anything different, but that's because we need to give each of these cards, basically the Flex children, we need to give those some widths. So let's come up here under speakers, and we'll go and create something for speakers, and then we'll do with the class of card as a child. And so anything with the class of card is going to be a width, say 50% first of all. And then you might be a little concerned about the way it looks right now, but don't worry, that's only because we have to tell the images exactly how big to be. So let's do something where, in fact, we don't even have to tell it specifically to be speakers card, we can just say card. And then maybe if we ended up using these for anything else, we could move it down in the general rule for classes. But for right now, let's just say that the card image, or the card IMG, is going to be a width of 100%, right? And so that way it'll keep it, keep it all together. And we also want to give it a max width. I don't know that I want them all to be that big. So let's do a max width. We can do 300 pixels like that. And so that keeps them a little bit more in order. And the other thing that we can then do is we can, let's do, well, we want to do margin auto, but the problem is that we can't center them exactly unless we also tell it to be display of block, if you remember that, because natively images are going to be inline, and now we can do margin auto, and then they will center themselves. And right now that doesn't look centered because the text isn't centered, so that's okay. What we can do up here for the card is we can come over here and say text align, and then we can say center like that, and then now all of the text is at least centered, right? So the other thing is that I think that I want to be able to put some padding on that card. So let's just say that we're going to do padding. For right now, let's do 5%. And that way we've got a little bit of space around. And yeah, I think let's just start with that. And then for the card image, I think the other thing is that we need to do a border radius. So I want to make these all circular. So let's do border dash radius. And I think that I want to make each of these, for right now, let's do 50%. So that these become circles. And then later what we can do is we can start to mess around with the border radius so that they're not perfectly 50%. Right now we'll just stick with circles. And then I want to give them an actual border because we want this to match what we're doing on the Figma drawing. And if you remember, those are, let's take a look at those in just a second, but I do remember that for sure that the color is magenta. So we'll do the variable of magenta, and we will make the border solid. And right now it's just giving it a basic solid, and for right now let's just say 5 pixels. We can go and verify it in just a second. That might be about right. Let's just take a look real quick with the Figma drawing. And if we take a look at this image, you will be able to see that in fact it does have a stroke, and yeah, and it's going to be okay. I think that's, yeah, and then that's correct because then we had bumped it over like 10 pixels, and yeah, okay, so I'm going to jump back over here and I can tell this then, let's give it padding so that it stands off the edge, and we'll give it padding of, let's say, 5 pixels also, like that. And you can see now that each of these has a circle around it. Next, I would like to take a look at how close that H3 is to the picture. So let's go ahead and make something for card H3. And I think that we want to make sure that it is first of all, it has the right color, so let's fix that. And we need to do the variable of magenta, so we'll add that. And so that's got the right color. And I also want to update the font size. Well, actually, I think I might be okay with that font size. So let's just leave it alone for a moment, and let's go ahead and give it a margin for starters. So let's do a margin of, maybe for the top, let's try like 1 rem, just so that it's not sitting right up against the edge. And then I think that we can do auto. And then I don't want any margin on the bottom. I want to pull the job title up. So we would do 0, and then let's just do auto, so that we have space that is here. I'm going to just click off of this for a second so that we can see what that looks like. And let's come over. Yeah, I think that that's okay. And the speaker name is, just underneath there. Now we also need to do something for the card H2. So let's, not H2, I'm sorry, paragraph. Because each one of these, like the job title and the company, those are paragraphs. If we wanted to give the job title a specific style or the company a specific style, these do have classes on them. You can see one is called title, one is called co for company. I'm not making those two things special, but I did include them in case you wanted to experiment with that. But for right now, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the margin for the paragraph right now. Right now, let's start with maybe 0 for top and bottom, and then we'll keep the left and right at auto as well. And if I wanted to adjust the type size, right now you can see that the type size doesn't necessarily change with how big the screen gets. So if I wanted that to get a little bit bigger or smaller or something, like right there, it doesn't really get any smaller. I'm also going to probably do a media query at some point, but I could actually just kind of use it the way that it is. But if I wanted to adjust the type, I could do that, right? I could come here and I could give it font size. And in fact, in this case, what I might want to do is locate the clamp up here that has the type size. Let's just take this clamp for the About P, and we'll paste that in. And we could take a look and see if that is going to suit our needs. It might, and it might not. I think it probably won't. Yeah, I think well, I don't know, maybe. It gets a little bit big for my taste. Yeah, so I think that we could adjust the maximum so that maybe it only gets to be like maybe 1.2 or something like that. And then it could go as small as like maybe 0.9 rem for really small spaces. Yeah, I think that's a little bit better. Yeah, I think that I can live with that. So that'll be my font size. And the other thing too is that if I have a name that I don't know if I'm going to get to this point, but if I had a name, well, I was going to say that overlaps itself so that it has to go to the next line, then I might want to make some adjustment to the line height, but I may not need to do that. Okay. All right, so I think I'm done with that section. The next section that I'm going to adjust is going to be the agenda.